Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Schaffner. I am the new Public Relations and Marketing Director for UNOS. It's so glad to see so many of you here, familiar faces. Microphones, as some of you may know, are a joy of mine for 25 years in the broadcast community here in Richmond. So they've asked me to help moderate this for you this morning, and this is really going to be exciting. A big hello to our friends in Hopewell. Connect Hopewell. Good to have you with us. They're there. Everybody wave. They're looking at you all right now. We're glad you're with us, and everybody who's joining us with webcasting. The next 90 minutes, we are going to take a look at case studies and best ideas. We have Scott Farr with Far Out, Cynthia Price, Child Fund International, Aaron Dotson with Elevation, John Newman is coming back to take the stand, and Kahnawake Haskins with the Office of Senator Jim Webb. All of them are up here. That is the quick introduction. We don't want to waste your time this morning. You can read all about them in their bios and talk with them during the break. This is really your time, these next 90 minutes. Listen closely, take notes, and write down those questions, because as you can see, this microphone moves, and I'm going to come to you for your questions, and we're going to get them all in here this morning. This is your time to really learn and to take home what social media means to your organization and how you can really implement it. All right. With all of that said, oh yeah, I've got to mention too, as I'm constantly telling my 15-year-old, get off the phone and stop texting. But this morning, the rules are different. Get the cell phone out, get the BlackBerry, the Trio. I want you all twittering as we're talking up here. It's very acceptable. It's the thing to do. And don't tell my 15-year-old daughter that, please. Cynthia Price, a dear friend of mine, and we've worked together for many, many years as when she was with the Richmond Police Department as the public information officer there. She has a new role. We both started new careers about the same time, just under a year, with Christian Children's Fund. However, that's what she's here to talk about today. It is no longer Christian Children's Fund, a new name, a new presence, a new image, all taking place here in Richmond. It started July 1st. She is now with Child Fund International. Take it away, Cynthia.
I'm not very good at sitting, so I have to get up. Because I have a lot of energy around this topic. So first of all, how many of you are following Child Fund on Twitter? All right, that's not enough hands. So let me tell you right now. There's about 200 of you in this room. Our campaign, our Twitter campaign, is for every 200 followers we get, we're going to ship another gift overseas to one of our communities. So, if every single one of you in this room starts following us today, it's 200 more people, that's another gift that goes overseas. What kind of gift am I talking about? I'm talking about a goat for a family. That goat means that that family will have milk to feed their children. The children won't be hungry anymore. They'll have energy. They can go to school. The goat can breed with another goat. They can sell the baby goats. We're going to be sending chickens. We're sending, what else are we sending? Mango trees in Kenya and vegetable seeds in Ethiopia. So at Child Fund, everybody follow us, okay? We started this campaign July 1, which is the day we changed our name. Actually, we started the campaign July 10th at our international office event. Our international office is here in Richmond. We wanted to get everybody engaged. We wanted to get our new name out there. People knew us as Christian Children's Fund. When you start seeing Child Fund, people are going to go, what in the world is Child Fund? So how can we educate people? So we said, let's get a social media campaign going. As Christian Children's Fund, we had had a presence on Facebook and we had had a presence with Twitter. For point of comparison, we had about 600 followers on Twitter as Christian Children's Fund. As of 9:30, we were at 1950 followers on Twitter. All right? Again, you get your 200 in there, we're going to be over 2,000 before the day is out. Facebook, today, we're at over 700 followers, but when we were on Christian Children's Fund Facebook, after 9 months, we'd only had 600 followers. So in about 3 weeks, we're way past where we were. And we are using Facebook and Twitter to drive traffic to our blogs, to get people talking about us. I'm dying to look on the screen because people are laughing. Oh, okay, great, yeah. You got to do it, right? So, again, the whole idea was to get people talking, to start the conversation. So what we decided to do was raise our visibility. And that's actually part of our strategic plan. We need to get the Child Fund name out there. So, we're going to do the traditional media. We've got new commercials airing. We wanted to get further engaged with the social media. As I told you, we were on Facebook, we were on Twitter, but we weren't getting the masses. So what did we need to do? So, killing me. I used to be a reporter too, so, we reporters, we want to know what's going on. I told Sue this wasn't going to bother me, but it doesn't bother me, I just want to know. So we wanted to get our new name out there. We wanted to tell people what we do. We are a 70-year-old organization. We help more than 15.2 million children and their family members in 31 countries. These are deprived, excluded, and vulnerable children. Children who lack resources for food, for health care, for education. But it's not about giving them an item. It's about changing their lives. It's about enabling them to become leaders of change, to actually make a difference. So we work from them, infant, healthy and secure infants, educated and confident children, skilled and involved youth, and then they can become change leaders within their organizations. So we wanted to get that message out. We thought a Twitter campaign, have people follow us, we could spread that message a little bit. But we don't have any influencers. We were in it, but nobody was really engaging with us. We were asking the questions. So contacted Jeff Livingston at CRT Tanaka, and I said, hey, what do we need to do? How do we get this going? And we came up with a really good strategy, but again, we still didn't have those influencers. What were we going to do? So I kept having conversations with Jeff, and I'm like, come on, Jeff, work with me here. I know you want to work with me. We're a great organization. We're doing great work. And Jeff said, all right, I'll leverage my influencer list. And if you know Jeff, he's got a lot of followers. So that's exactly what we did. We put together this campaign very quickly. Our goals were pretty straightforward. We wanted to increase visibility. We weren't interested in donations. We weren't interested, we'd love to get them, don't get me wrong, but what we really wanted to do was just get people to be aware of what Child Fund is and the work that we're doing. So we launched the campaign on July 10th, and within a day we had a couple hundred followers, so we were actually very excited. One day, we're already getting as many followers as we'd had after 9 months. One of the things that we decided to do was also, good posts on our Facebook page. We revamped our blogs. Again, with the blogs, that's where we were adding additional content. In-depth stories about the work that we do, photos, photo albums. And again, this is a cross-functional thing within our organization. I'm in communications and public affairs, but we also have marketing and strategic resources. Marketing and strategic resources is interested in getting on in the social media realm, but they're interested in it from the fundraising aspect of it. But nobody's going to give if they don't know about your organization. So we start in the communications world with that education, and down the road, we'll introduce our causes. The items that we're sending overseas are coming from our Gifts of Love and Hope catalog, so we'll start promoting that closer to the holiday season. But really, it was about education and increasing that visibility. So, again, we used Jeff's influencers. We sort of spread them out over the course of the 2 weeks for the campaign. It ends on the 27th. Yesterday, Live Earth tweeted and blogged about us. Beth Cantor allowed Jeff to be a guest blogger on her space. Every time that happened, our numbers shot up. it was perfect timing. Our board was meeting, and I was giving them an overview of social media and what we're doing. Now, we have some very, very hip board members, but we also have some board members who were like, a blog, a tweet? What are you talking about? It was great because they were interested. They wanted to know. And just in the time that I was doing the presentation to them, we got 200 new followers because Jason Pollock tweeted about us, and our numbers shot up. And in the meantime, several of the board members who do have Twitter accounts, they started tweeting and adding to the conversation. The blogs have done a lot of interviews with us and have said, how did you get management to get on board with this? You know, and I feel a little maybe guilty or blessed because that was never a problem. From the moment I got to Child Fund International, I simply said, we need to be in the social media arena. Let's really ramp up what we're doing. And then we kind of decided to tone it down a bit because we knew the name change was coming. And I didn't want to have thousands of followers on Twitter or Facebook under the Christian Children's Fund name and then try and get you to move over. And I also didn't want you to think that I was doing like a bait and switch on you and have you go, well, wait, I was going to follow you. I was following you under Christian Children's Fund, and now you're this other thing. So we really wanted to wait till the new name was out there. So as soon as we decided to do this campaign, first step, we took it internal. Within your company, how many of you think your employees are posting on Facebook or sending a tweet out throughout the day? And how many of you have policies against that? You know, that's the interesting thing. This is the way of things are going, you know, and I'm kind of old school myself, and so I'll walk around, and every time I come up to somebody on my staff, all of a sudden they hit a button, and their whole tweet deck goes away. Like, they don't think I can't see that in that half second. I don't care. I'm hoping maybe they're doing something for us. As long as their work's getting done, I'm fine. You know, keep sending those tweets out. Put those posts up there. But, you know, if your own employees haven't joined you on Facebook, haven't signed up on Twitter, then you're not going to get anywhere because they're your first line. They're your first your first network that you want to reach out to. And what we did is every one of us took our own networks and sent out messages, and that got our numbers started. And it also generated a lot of enthusiasm and buzz within our organization. Again, remember, 70-year-old organization, we're changing our name. There's a lot of change and angst with that, and also a lot of excitement, and this campaign got that started. So it actually became an internal communications campaign for us. So we got them going. Then Jeff joined on, and he started adding to our numbers. I was just getting ready to ask our president if she would either tweet or start blogging. I never even got to ask her. We were going to a videotaping, and she said, Cynthia, blogging, that's just going to take a lot of effort on my part. I don't have that. But this tweeting thing, 140 characters, I'm pretty sure I can do that. I think I can manage that. I said, great. And so she's going to start tweeting. Not every day, but she goes to the field a lot. She sees the programs firsthand. And again, the education part of it, people want to understand. You know, one of the questions we hear from people, are those children real in the commercials? Does my money really go to somebody? The answer is yes, because you know, I was in Africa last summer and I got to see the programs firsthand. A lot of great work, and I was blogging from the field. Unfortunately, the internet connection in the middle of nowhere doesn't work, so you have to wait till you get back to a larger city to actually get it out there. But it's real. But people who don't get to go to the field don't know that, and that's what we're trying to do with these campaigns is, again, we're going to be educating people and letting them know what happens. So what's the next step with our Twitter campaign? You know, it ends on Monday, so at that point, we'll have, we hope, amassed a good following, and we're going to keep informing people of what we're doing. We're going to next send the items overseas, and we're sending flip cams. Have you seen these little flip cams? You just plug them into your computer. All right, I'll tell you how great they are. I kept hearing about them, and I promise you I don't work for Best Buy or anybody else. They're about $150. You buy them. I took it out of the box, never opened the direction, found the on button, plugged it into my computer, because when you hit this other button, the little thing came out. See how technical I am? And shoved it in, charged it, pulled it out. It was the day of our international event. Went down, interviewed my president, interviewed a couple of other folks, posted the video. Never read the instructions. Thinking this is the way to go, right? Because every time I send the expensive cameras overseas or hire a photographer overseas, I don't get what I want. So we're going to send these flip cams along with the gifts. And so let's just make it a little more real. Lisa is in a community in Africa, and I'm sending a goat to her family. That camera is also going to the community. Somebody from our office is going to go. They're going to show Lisa's family getting the goat. Then in a couple weeks, they'll come out and show them tending the goat. They'll show Lisa's children going off to school and the opportunities that are provided. So you'll actually get to see firsthand what happened with those gifts. And for those who are following us, there was no monetary commitment. What was interesting about this is, I had several people say, I don't want to wait for 200 more people to follow. I want to know that something's going now. And so we told them, fine, here's the link to our gift catalog, pick something, buy it, make a difference right now. And that was really exciting for us. So again, get the conversation started, get people involved, follow up, show what's going to happen now. So we'll have the video, we'll have the stories, and then we're going to keep doing other things. We're going to keep informing our followers about what's going on. But we also want to contribute to the conversation. There's a lot of people in the nonprofit world that we can exchange ideas. You know, at the very start of this morning, Lisa and I were talking about different people that we're working with, freelancers, partnering with the universities, a lot of opportunity for shared ideas. So for us, we also want to be able to provide information to others on other topics, and we want to hear from others and get their suggestions. So this is the easiest way to do it. It's very quick, it's instantaneous, and we're finding that it's making a difference. And I'm like dying to know, like just in this time, like what our Twitter numbers are up to, but I can't because that's over there, and I've not been disconnected from my little device for this long in a while. So that's the overview. And I'm going to turn it back to Lisa for all the questions for all of us.
And I'll start out because I have the microphone in my hand. Tell us, Cynthia, what is the major, perhaps, misstep that you've encountered with this new social media, especially with the name change and trying to get those supporters? There's got to be a negative there somewhere.
Yeah, early on when we announced what we were doing with the campaign, there was some confusion as to who was paying for the gift items. Somebody blogged and said, well, aren't you just redirecting funds from another place, and so how's this really helping children? And that wasn't the case at all, so we immediately posted and had people retweet for us. We found a sponsor who is going above and beyond his usual donation amount and is giving us that money to basically fund this campaign. So that was not conveyed initially correctly, but within 2 hours we had it fixed.
All right, it's up to, all right, stand up. Now I'm gonna come to you folks, so that's the, identify yourself and which organization you're with.
Okay. I'm Kathy Tappan, and I'm with Children's Home Society, and I had a question as to how much time you and your team spend twittering each day or tweeting each day.
Is that for me or for everybody?
And let's go down the line. Cynthia, we'll start with you, and then we'll hit down the line.
Well, I have one person who's really into social media, so that's one of his responsibilities, but trust me, he has many others. I don't spend an awful lot of time on it. I've been doing it today just because it's kind of fun, but most of the time I'm in meetings. But if we're going to be doing this right, it's going to be full-time, and in fact, I have been interviewing this past week candidates for our community manager position, and that is a full-time job.
From my personal account, I'm probably 2 or 3 tweets a day. Like, it's not a whole lot of time. It's 140 characters, which is great for me because I can't write that well anyway. But we also have some other accounts that we manage that are more often. And so, but still, it's only 140 characters, so it's not like it takes a whole lot of time out of your day to do that.
Now, Scott, you're at 2 or 3, you say, a day?
About 2 or 3.
And is that the level that you want to continue at?
For my personal account, it is, yes.
All right. Aaron?
Like Scott, I primarily do Twitter through my personal account, and it all varies as to how busy I am at the time. I would say on average I spend probably a half hour a day at least reading through tweets and seeing what other folks within my network are saying. On days where things that they're saying are engaging to me and I'm engaging in conversations, I can have as many as 12 to 15 tweets a day. But on a normal day where I'm just tweeting about things going on with me and with work and my experiences, I'm probably more in the range of 3 to 5 tweets a day.
John?
Those who know me on Twitter know that that's the wrong question to ask me. It's different because there's work and then there's personal. At work, I use TweetDeck, which is one of the various different platforms that makes Twitter easy. And I have to monitor a number of different client Twitter accounts and sort of keep an eye on them. So I will have on my computer my Outlook up for my emails, my Facebook up, and my TweetDeck up all at the same time. And when I have time, I sort of rotate through all of them. And where appropriate, I will, respond or engage. At night is when I do, and my wife hates this, a lot of my personal tweeting. So you'll see me more at night, either promoting the blog or talking to Aaron or talking to John or, just sort of commenting about events of the day or posting Springsteen videos.
Yeah.
So.
Most of John's and my conversations take place after 11.
Exactly, without question. If you want to see us talking, that's when you can see us talking.
Now, I'm going to step in here, Conway, just before we get to you. This is interesting to me because there is this line that we had personal life and we have business life. And now you're telling me that people are tweeting personal and I'm influencing on the business side. Where's the difficulty there? When am I representing Lisa Schaffner and when am I representing UNOS? Where does the personal side not interfere with the business side? Talk about doing the personal tweet versus coming from...
It's something that especially we in communications who are active struggle with every day, just because you find yourself building, and Graydon talked about this and he might talk about it again today, building your social media capital and then figuring out when it is appropriate and in spurts to spend that capital on behalf of your organizations that you belong to, or clients that you represent, or things that that are personal to you that you want to promote. So you have to be really careful of that, because what ends up happening is if you become too much of a shill, then people will stop following you and stop seeing the value in what you're doing. So you have to be, at least I find myself being very intentional about that and using social media capital in measured ways. People still, think that I'm providing value to the broader community.
Kahnawake, talk about Senator Jim Webb's office in terms of the number of tweets you're using a day and the social media campaign and how you're using it.
Yeah, well, actually, the question that you asked before about the personal versus professional is probably the theme of my life for the last 2.5 years. And the reason that is because in government, and it's a little bit different than when you're in private business or in a nonprofit organization, when you're in government, not only are there just general do's and don'ts that are cultural, but they're literally legal and administrative things that we can't do. So frankly, we actually don't have an active Twitter page for Senator Webb just yet, but we are on Facebook, but that's even in and of itself an issue, because for members of Congress, there's actually a 7-page Facebook and Congress guide that comes from the company in terms of what we can and cannot do, because there's a strict separation at the congressional level between the political, the personal, and the official governmental activity. And so for us, most of my personal tweets are done after hours, much to the chagrin of my wife as well. And I tend to do about 1 or 2 tweets a day personally. When there's an award show, like the BET Awards, for example, or the Oscars, I do a lot of tweets. Some people find them funny, some people don't. And so for us, it really is a matter of separating out the personal versus the governmental. And we just converted the senator's personal/political Facebook page into an official government Facebook page, and that required us to redo his biography to make sure that we're in compliance with federal regulations and Senate ethics. And so it really is a trickier situation for us in government. And the reason I say it's been sort of a hallmark of the last 2.5 years is part of the reason I got to where I am with Senator Webb is because I was a blogger part-time before this and working in the nonprofit sector. And I just have a quick question. How many of my Facebook friends are here today? Good, you guys are really cool. The rest of you ought to really be my Facebook friends. And then the other piece of it is it's really interesting to be here because to see that difference between folks that are in the private sector, whether it's nonprofit and business, and what those of us in government can do and what those of us in government do manage to do. Now, there are a number of members of Congress, including our, Senator Mark Warner, who do have Twitter pages. But the key there, and the reason that we haven't pushed Twitter yet, is that Twitter is all about authenticity. The last thing that you really want to be caught doing on a Twitter page, and this has happened to a lot of members of Congress and governors and other folks lately, is to be seen as basically just having a bunch of staff people doing updates for you. And so if you're really not going to do it yourself, stay out of it. And that's been our philosophy with respect to Twitter. Facebook, people understand it's an entire apparatus. You've got to have staff. But there are a number of senators like Claire McCaskill from Missouri who literally is like Twittering her activities herself, and that makes it more authentic and it's good for her. But right now, Twitter, we're focusing on Facebook and on our own internal web pages and things like that in terms of social media.
All right, questions, hands, right? Oh, good. Quick name and who you're with.
Karen Cameron, I'm with the Central Virginia Health Planning Agency. One of the issues, we have similar issues I think a lot of executive directors of nonprofits do because we're so tightly associated with our organization. There have been many times when I've wanted to send a letter to the editor or something of that sort where I've hesitated to do it because I know that there would be people who would look at it, and even if I didn't put Central Virginia Health Planning Agency, they would assume that that was the position of my organization. So that is one of the issues. I've been told for over a year that I should start a blog because of the type of work that we do and because healthcare now is such a big issue. How do we manage this so that we make sure that we give frank information and honest information, but at the same time don't offend people so that there's a negative ramifications against the organization?
Come on, get in there, one of you. Kahnawake.
Well, I would say what I would recommend that you do is that you do set up the blog and establish a policy for your company in terms of what you can, for your organization in terms of what you can do, and then publicize that so people know. The thing is, people know, the Senate ethics rules are online. You can see them. Now, you may not want to read through all 500 pages of it, but they're online. So people know here are the constraints that we have, and I think that was the lesson I learned as a blogger. Is just if you do have constraints, if you do have restrictions, be frank. Quite honestly, I would hope that nobody thinks that my choice for best actor at the Oscars is representing Senator Webb's choice, but you never know. So you have to be upfront and fully disclose what it is that you're doing when you're engaging in social media, so that folks know, if you're with a company, you're gonna market your company, you're gonna advertise your company, you're gonna you're going to push for the person that you're working for if you're in a campaign operation, if you're in a nonprofit. But there is a line. You just have to define it so that it's clear to other people when you're speaking for yourself and when you're speaking for someone else.
Scott, I see you shaking your head. Weigh in. You've got words there. Go.
I don't know. I just think about my own personal Twitter account versus business Twitter account. And actually, two different Twitter accounts, really. And if you want to know about all my coffee drinking and my hot dogs and what I put on my hot dogs, you're welcome to follow my personal Twitter account. I'm totally cool with that. But that is the purpose of my Twitter account, to talk about my kids and my wife and my eating habits, as terrible as they may be. On the other hand, I have Far Out, and Far Out has a Twitter account, Far Out RVA, if you want to follow it, and I tweet things that are relevant to them, so relevant to us. Obviously, my last name is in my company name, so I'm very tied to that name. But I tweet things like, "Here's a project that we just finished. Here is you should update your IE. If you have IE6, I will tell everybody in the room right now. If you have IE6, you have holes that viruses and hackers can get into. Update your IE." I will say things like that because it's important from a business standpoint. Then we have RVA News, which is a whole other Twitter account and whole other project that goes on, and we have a different purpose. We have a different purpose for that as well. What are they saying? We need a computer. Can someone get us a computer up here? So there's a whole other purpose for that and goal for that Twitter account as well. So I think Kahnawake's right. You need to define not only what you say and your guidelines and your regulations, but like what your goals are for your Twitter account, whether you have one or many.
And I actually think that's the key to social media as a whole. Is it's not an issue of everybody's doing it, let's hop on, and there's that feeling right now, I think, and I talk to a lot of clients that have that feeling of, wow, the wave is actually going past us. We need to get on. I've got to get on Facebook. I've got to get on Twitter, and that's a realistic feeling. I understand that, but you've got to stop and look at it from a strategic standpoint first. Does it make sense from your organization? You know what? It actually doesn't make sense for all organizations. And it's worth stopping first and having that conversation. Does it make sense for us? If so, what are our strategic objectives for what we're hoping to get out of getting into social media? And once you can set those strategic objectives, then you have a framework not only for success measurement down the road, but in everything that you do, the reason you're doing it. What are the types of topics I'm tweeting about? Am I tweeting about hot dogs, or am I tweeting about thought leadership as related to my organization? Without doing that step first, you're really setting yourself up to be unsuccessful in social media.
There are a lot of people in this room who probably wear a lot of different hats. Their professional hat, meaning where they work, and then the organization that they're volunteering for and whose board you may be the executive director of. I think if you are blogging for your nonprofit, but you also have a job, you have to be very clear on your blog that you're blogging specifically for that nonprofit, and you probably want to talk to your boss at work to let them know and make sure that they're okay that you're doing that, because at some point the two may conflict, and getting that permission on the front end is going to be very valuable to you. And it also gives you cover if one of the people in this world has an issue with what you say in this world. So as long as you're clear with everybody, as long as it's on your blog that I am blogging specifically about this and not in my role, as a lawyer, accountant, doctor, whatever, I think that's a good first step.
I think Aaron made a good point too about why are you getting into social media? We didn't decide to get into social media because we wanted to be in social media. We have 300,000 supporters. There is no way to connect those 300,000 supporters. We can't even have, large receptions with them because they're scattered all over. It would get very costly. So what we heard from them is they do want to be connected, and social media is the way to do it.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Hall with the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, and I especially like John's earlier comment about the fact that negative things are happening regardless of whether you address them in your social media applications. I'd like to hear from some of you about situations where you've had to navigate negativity, and I will acknowledge that it's great on-the-spot research, as Cynthia indicated, but I'd love to hear how you've really managed it.
How about each of you give us maybe an example? This was the negative comment, and this is how it was managed. Scott, go.
Never mind. Think about that. So the question was how we manage.
Have you had a negative comment that you've had? Cynthia, maybe let me try with you. Have you had something? Anyone up there?
Okay, I do.
All right, there you go.
And this actually started before we were really into the social media, but it started in the blogosphere. There was a post that we had turned down a sizable donation from Gen Con. And Gen Con is the gaming community around Dungeons and Dragons. Does anybody play Dungeons and Dragons? Because I don't want to insult anybody. All I can tell you is Dungeons and Dragon people are really committed to the game. But they're also really committed to giving, and they were doing an auction, and they had raised money and wanted to give it to us. Well, before we were able to accept it, the organizers of this gaming auction decided to give it somewhere else. Only that wasn't conveyed to all of the Dungeons and Dragon players, who then started blogging about how dare we not, this is when we were still Christian Children's Fund, how dare we use our Christian principles to put down Dungeons and Dragons, and they weren't the devil worshipers and all this. And you know, I came into work one morning and my inbox was just blown out, and I went, what in the world? And we immediately got on the blogosphere, and this is where you can't be afraid of it. You know, we put together a statement in under 2 hours. You know, we ran it past the president so she would be aware of what was going on, but we answered every single person. And I can tell you this because I spent the entire weekend with carpal tunnel syndrome after responding to about 3,000 people individually. But we got the head of Gen Con, their PR person, to talk about it, to post on it, and we addressed the controversy head on so that people would know what our stand was, where we had gone with it, and you know, shared that way.
Can I step in here real quick? You talk about 2 hours, and to me, that's the key with the whole social media. It's that instantaneous.
And that's long, actually.
Something happening in 2 hours in certain organizations, it's not going to happen. You're going to stretch it out to 6 if you're lucky. So then what do? Is it as effective if you stretch it out to a 6-8 hour response? And also, and John, I'll throw this to you, taking in the whole management. I mean, obviously your upper echelon has to be involved, but sometimes, let's admit it, folks, when the upper echelon gets involved, things get watered down or poo-pooed, and then the effectiveness of the message sometimes is not as great.
I think, you know, from my perspective, where, you know, when, you know, a lot of the crises that clients come to us with are days and weeks long by the time, you know, we get a hold of them. So to be able even to compress a crisis within a day, is, you know, for, you know, PR people or crisis management people, you know, that's magical. I mean, because usually, like I outlined before, you know, it gets played out in the media for 3 or 4 days. It becomes, even if it's true or not true, it becomes urban legend by the time you figure out what's true and what's not. So here's a way, in a very direct way, to communicate directly your point of view and then engage in a conversation. And as Cynthia pointed out, be able to manage the conversation, and then, as I said before, the ability to flip people to your point of view within a day is, you know, is amazing. I mean, the one example that I had was, we have a client, National Harbor, which is up across the Potomac. They're building the city across the Potomac from Alexandria, but they just opened up the bike path from Alexandria across the Woodrow Wilson Bridge to the Maryland side where National Harbor is. The folks at National Harbor didn't finish off the bike path and didn't put places for people to put their bikes on the other side. So very quickly, you know, Washington Post online got a hold of that, all that kind of stuff. And that was the client that said, you know, we very quickly realized we had a problem that we might not have realized before. People would have talked about it amongst themselves. We might have gotten some media pressure, but people came to us directly and said, you know, you've got a problem. And within a day, they bought temporary bike paths. They're considering whether to finish it off. So you're able to diffuse things very, very quickly by sometimes you guys even don't realize you have a problem until it's too late. This is a way for you to realize you have a problem by engaging and then quickly, you know, changing the dynamic.
And it's not always major problems either. I mean, I've got a financial services client that recently unveiled a new product and noticed in one of the local online publications in a comment field that someone had made a negative comment about the product, saying that it was taking advantage of folks, and frankly the information they were using was just absolutely wrong. So the client very quickly responded in that comment field to say, thank you for sharing your concerns. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about this product because I fear that you've misread some of the information, and was very quickly able to flip that person. As John said, there was an immediate response back that said, you're absolutely right, I did not understand it, thanks for clarifying it. So a very small thing that potentially could have turned into a big thing if that had been perpetuated through comment boards. And if you've read comment sections, that can happen, right? One comment begets another, and things can get out of control. But if you're present there in the conversation, then you have the opportunity to help to manage that conversation.
And for us, what we've seen in our shop is, we always have to constantly define whether something's a crisis or whether something's an inconvenience. Because a crisis is something that has to have a full-blown response. Something that's an inconvenience, you're going to take shots from people, especially when you're in government and politics. People are going to, and you can't respond to every single slight, every single attack. But I think that's where the social part of social media comes in, because we were able to have several situations where, particularly in the days when the blogs were driving things more than, say, the Facebooks and Twitter, but when there were full-blown blogs, there was just bad information out there, and there was bad information, for various reasons. That's when the social kicked in. We got on the phone with people. We emailed people, particularly when we knew where the comments were originating or where the blog posts were originating. And that's where we worked our personal relationships. But we had built those relationships previously. It wasn't just, back and forth in a comment section. It was the fact that, I could talk to this guy or to this woman who was having this issue. And in a lot of those instances, it actually turned out really positive for us because they didn't expect us to have a personal response. They didn't expect us to reach out. And so we did it, and we avoided a much bigger situation and actually turned a negative into a positive.
And that brings, I think, a really important point. Should you have some type of policy or guidelines in place for an organization on what you do respond to and what you don't respond to? Or do you just take that as an individual case and get yourself into it first?
I think that's where the listening comes in. We've had a number of times with clients where there would be one post and automatically it becomes very personal. It's all of a sudden, for the first time maybe, somebody's saying something bad about you in a public forum, and your instinct is to jump right back. And sometimes the better instinct is to see if somebody else says something bad first, because it may not, it might just be that one comment, and you might just want to take it with a grain of salt. It's like any other personal conversation. So the listening piece and the monitoring piece is really important. You can see how quickly things will escalate and when, you should insert yourself. And sometimes it's not right away. Sometimes you just have to wait and see for an hour or two to see if that was the only negative, or whether, that would be good to engage because, we want to sort of cut it there, or to see, the beauty about these communities is sometimes, God forbid, somebody takes up your cause and responds back for you and says, they do a good job. And when the community, responds back in a good way, then that you've built up a good community because they're defending you. And that we've seen that happening a lot, where the community will defend you before you even have a chance to defend yourself.
Tom Driscoll, Virginia Board of People with Disabilities. This is an elaboration on what you've been talking about, and that is our board. One of the questions I get a lot from them is, as people are using comment sections more for news articles and for other things online, as they're linking to things through Facebook and through Twitter to pass on information to their followers and their friends. And Lisa can speak to this, I'm sure, too, the blurring that's happened between public relations and true news reporting, for example. One of the questions I get from our board members over and over and over again is, I don't have the time, I'm not somebody that works in this full time like you are, to understand all of the nuances of this is a real news site versus this is a placed site, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What are the tips that you would tell me, to tell my board, to tell our constituents when they're seeing all the information that's being dumped on them through Twitter and Facebook and comment sections and news articles and all that stuff, to help filter through what is a legitimate news source or a legitimate research organization versus these placed things, which are becoming so common and so hard to distinguish. Many of the blogs are written in the form of a news story.
Yeah, I think and Kahnawake, you could probably speak to this too. You do have a lot. The bloggers have kind of blurred that line between news that's whether it's NBC 12 or Richmond Times-Dispatch or whatever, Style Weekly, versus like just some Joe Schmo over here that just wants to write about, a news item or something. And I kind of think about this with UCrops, when UCrops, the whole UCrops is selling, and I think there was even it went across the whole bloggers sphere, and Style Weekly picked it up, and RV News picked it up, and I think Richmond Magazine, I think, is the one that broke it, and but none of the employees had heard it at all from UCrops, and so it's kind of like, what do you believe and what do you not believe? and what I think is that a lot of the bogus ones, you're going to see a lot of comments that come on those bloggers, and will say, no, that's not right, check this out, and they'll link to something else that is more reputable, that has more reputation on the internet and just in the community. I don't know, thoughts over there?
No, I think you're right on that. I think we don't have such a strict line of delineation between blogs and newspaper. I mean, we actually have blogs on our media list, and so if we have a national list and we have a state list, we have a community list. We use RVA News, so if there's something that the senator's doing that's local, we're sending it to the Richmond Times-Dispatch, Richmond Magazine, Style Weekly. We're sending it to RVA News. We're sending it to, if there are particular bloggers out there that have have a niche locally. But that's because we've got folks on staff who follow blogs, who keep up with them, both in our communications team, a lot of us in our our field offices, and we're engaging with people. I mean, we've been, and that's where, again, the social side of it comes. We sort of know what's what. We got the Google alerts going, or Yahoo alerts, whatever, so we can kind of monitor what's happening all the time. We err on the side of putting information out there. Whoever wants to transmit that information, it's up to them, because sometimes there'll be blogs that carry something that the mainstream media source won't carry for whatever reason. And hey, for us, that's great as long as the information is accurate. So we don't, we try not to discriminate too much between, who's the media source and where they are. Last week we had the Tea Parties all across the state, and the Tea Party folks showed up at every office that we have in Virginia, I think, except for our Far Southwest office. And there were newspaper at one point at our Richmond office. There was a Richmond Times-Dispatch person, there was a conservative blogger, and there was a photographer who was doing video blogging and live tweeting the thing. They were all there together. We talked to all of them. There's no, oh, we're only going to talk to the reporter. Oh, we'll only talk to this. You talk to everybody, and really get your message out.
It's welcome to the future. I mean, and I think maybe your role is, as these guys are talking about, to figure out which of the new media that's emerging is reputable, has a reputation, has a following, and then you can go back to your folks and say, okay, here are all the media, including the online media now that we're now learning about and embracing, that we feel are the key influencers. People are talking about the shrinking of the media. It's really the shrinking of the traditional media. The rest of the media is expanding, and it's flattening out, and you're getting much more neighborhood, almost block by block media. So the media is actually growing. The definition of the media is growing, but it's the traditional media that's shrinking, not the media in and of itself.
And the traditional media is following the blogosphere. We had a segment on Fox News that originated because they picked up on something on a blog and reached out to that person, and they built a segment around it, and then we ended up coming in on the story to present our perspective later in the day on the Bill O'Reilly show. But that all of that originated from the blogosphere, so you have to be following it.
How many people live in the far West End? How many people felt the earthquake that happened a couple of weeks ago? So the way I found out about it was the next morning I was on Twitter, and there was a link to Trevor Dickerson's Downtown Short Pump. He had the story about the earthquake, and there were a couple of other bloggers that even had like seismographic, stuff like that. The paper didn't have it till 2 days later. Yeah. So, is Trevor less of a journalist because he's a blogger? I mean, he beat the traditional media the same way that, that we were just talking about UCROP. Some of the non-traditional media sort of beat the traditional media in that sense. So, it's now up to us to learn how much of this bigger, media spectrum are folks that we feel are reputable and we can trust, just like we did in the days when there was 2 papers and 3 TV stations.
And maybe the most important sign of the importance of social media and blogs in terms of challenging and being a part of the larger media scene is there are bloggers in the White House press corps. And the president at his first press conference called on folks from the Huffington Post and other blogs. And so, it's here. I mean, it's social media, the new media. It used to be called citizen journalism. I think that's one of the other times we were here at UR a couple of years back. It was citizen journalism. It's here. It's already here. You've got to figure out what you want to do with it.